if the question initially is, why start on New Year's, maybe the flip is why not start on New Year's. It's as good a time as any to pursue anything you're trying. So might as well start it now, but do it with some earnest planning and goal setting. Hello, welcome to Chai Across Generations. This podcast is for anyone who wants to explore or improve their relationship with their culture, their relationships with loved ones in other generations, and ultimately their relationship with themselves. Shankar and I are on this journey, and we're excited that you're joining us today as we talk about New Year. Shankar, how are you?
I'm doing well, Nikhil. Thanks for the Happy New Year, first of all, to you.
Happy New Year, my friend. How was your holiday?
It was good. Relative to past holidays, I seem to have eaten more than I
Oh, really?
liked. Yeah.
Okay. You mean relative to previous New Year's, or?
Right.
Okay.
The previous holiday seasons, like spanning all the way from, say, a little before Christmas through to New Year.
Yeah.
And but it's all good. I went to my martial arts workout today, and trying to get back on that, the workout regimen.
Yeah, that's good. I can relate to that. After a fun holidays with friends and family, I have recommitted to exercising the last few days and getting back on the wagon. So I guess it's that traditional, exercise uptick that you see, and I'm hoping to sustain it.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
But Shankar, I was thinking about how New Year's is such a big event, and also how it's very different culturally and generationally.
Right.
And I thought maybe we could start there as we talk about New Year's in this episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I was first curious to get just your personal, impression of how has your idea of New Year's changed over the years, and where does it stand right now? Do you want to start with that? And then I'll share, and then we'll talk about,
Yeah. So I think New Year's was held a bigger presence in my mind when I was younger. The turning of the calendar, the fireworks, right? The clock ticking down to midnight. All of those elements held a bigger appeal to me when I was younger. And now it's still a fun event, but it doesn't hold quite the same awe, maybe, as it did when I was younger.
Right.
I am more content to go to bed before midnight now than I was as a kid.
Right.
One thing I've been thinking about is how much different are things really, right, as you go into the new year. It's great aspirationally to set new goals and to try to change ourselves and all of that. I like that piece of it. But I think I used to believe in the powerful transformation of New Year's for the world a lot more when I was younger than I do now.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad you shared that. I think similarly for me, the idea of New Year's has changed a lot over the years. So growing up in India, I don't think it was as big a deal as it is now, both there and here. And I think when I was a little older, I remember my parents taking us to some parties, not every year, but once in a while. It was more infrequent. And then after coming here, it was definitely a big deal, in college and stuff like that, staying up till midnight and, thinking of it more as a time to party down and have fun with friends and stuff like that. But you're so right. Since about 10 or so many years ago, a lot of changes in my life, and I started actually meditating and reflecting on all these things. And you start questioning this very simple thing, is that why is that particular time so special in the calendar, right? And when I started to dig into that, this may come as a shock to many people, but in terms of an astronomical significance, it's the lowest. There's nothing astronomically significant happening either with the sun or the moon or anything on Jan 1st.
Okay, yeah.
it's a completely made up thing.
Uh-huh.
Because if you go back and look at, the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, look at all the Western calendars, right? And then you look at calendars in the East, you look at the Indian calendar, you look at the Chinese calendar and stuff. The more ancient civilizations had calendars that were synchronized with either an important solar event or an important lunar event, right? But the modern day calendar is completely made up. It has no such astronomical significance.
Right. Yeah.
And that baffled me. It really baffled me. I said, what? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for instance, in where I come from, and you come from in South India, the entrance of the sun into a particular constellation of the zodiac, Mesham we call it, is the mark of the new year. Right. So there is an astronomical significance. You can measure it. Right. But Jan 1st is just a made up thing.
Yeah.
And that's always, since I've seen that, like you said, it's sort of taken the gas out of the whole event, right?
When did you first see that?
I'm hard pressed, but I'm thinking, yeah, somewhere in the last 10 years.
Okay.
Right? Probably 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that time frame.
Yeah. I mean, that goes to this point of different cultures and what is the new year? When does the new year start?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Right? You have Chinese New Year. Even am I right to say that Pongal is considered the new year in Tamil tradition?
In India also, there is a lot of variation within the country.
Okay.
Right. So, no, for us, Tamil New Year's Day, if I remember it, is different. It comes in April sometime, if I'm not mistaken. In our calendar, of course, it moves around. Right. But Pongal is very significant. It's the harvest festival, so there is definitely that, aspect. But Gujarati New Year is different. Is a different day. Like the New Year changes. The significance of the New Year changes even within India. Not everyone considers the same day the New Year's Day. So that for us, I guess we have an unfair advantage in that we already have this diversity of New Year in our culture.
Right.
And I think that's good. I mean, there are solar calendars, there are lunar calendars, there are lunisolar calendars, and I think they all have their significance. And fine. I mean, I'm happy. The way in our modern society, I know that you're not going to find anybody at work on Jan 1st morning or December 31st night, and that's fine. I mean, I'm happy that people have a time to get away and have fun, and but it just struck me that it's kind of made up.
Yeah. Right.
But to your point, yes, I'm not very big on staying up till midnight anymore. I actually try to keep to my usual bedtimes if I can, and mostly I'm able to do that. I think, yes, some sense of planning. There comes a sense that you can, plan some things anew and afresh, and there is that. I'm not completely immune to that. But I was talking to a much younger friend today, and she was saying that no, she's not making any New Year's resolutions this year. She's just like gonna enjoy the New Year as it is.
Yeah. So let's talk about New Year's resolutions. And I have a hunch that maybe this is different generationally.
Probably.
Because I feel like for some people, New Year's resolutions are a sacred tradition. And for others, like the friend you were mentioning, you can just toss them aside. So where do you stand on New Year's resolutions? And where do you think your generation stands on New Year's resolutions?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Tough one. So I think I've made them in the past, in the long past, in the distant past, 20 years ago maybe. But I haven't in a while really done that. And I was talking to my daughter, and she says her resolutions come up in July usually. I don't know why, but yeah. Our generation, I think everybody takes the New Year resolution with a bit of pinch of salt because there's so much fall off in the first 30 days. That I think people feel ashamed to even share them
Mm.
sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. What do you
absolutely.
think? Yeah.
So I think that New Year's resolutions are often untethered to
Hmm.
what we really want. They're kind of made in haste. For example, I
Right.
want to get in better shape, right?
Hmm.
And I'm a much bigger fan of taking a more holistic view of what
Hmm.
you're trying to achieve and then maybe backing into, like, I'm all for a yearly goal, right? To say,
Hmm.
in this year, I want to do this. But I
Hmm.
think it takes a bit of an inventory on, let me look across all the spheres of my life. So there's
Hmm.
a YouTuber named Ali Abdal who is a productivity expert and is generally about trying to help people find fulfillment.
Hmm.
And he kind of has a wheel of life type of exercise where you look at these 9 spheres of your life. And if you
Hmm.
look at, there's a couple different quadrants, but within like the people quadrant, you have relationship and family and friends. And the idea
Hmm.
is, once you take a look at these 9 different quadrants, you pick a goal for each one. And you say,
Hmm.
this year, here's what I want to do. And so now
Hmm.
you've got 9 goals, and then you can also stagger them. You can say, well, 9 goals is a lot, but maybe I can hit these 3 in the first 3 months, and
Right.
maybe I'll focus on these 3 later. So I like that type of intentional planning more
Right.
than a New Year's resolution. That's something I'm trying to do this year more, right? Let me take a
Ah.
holistic view. What goals can I hit realistically over a full year? And what goals do I need to
Right.
maybe say stage gate, right? Let me focus on these first, then go to these. Whereas in
I
the
like that.
past, yeah, whereas in the past I've also just said, oh, here's my goal, and that's it.
Right. No, I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And for me, I approached it in a slightly different way. So I got into this planner thing. So there's something called Passion Planner that my daughter
Hmm.
introduced me to a while ago. And I think maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I forget now. And so my planner it has an August start date because it's an academic calendar.
Mm.
Okay. And so I get my planners in the summer, and in the front page, it has a planning exercise like, your goals 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, etc. So there's a staging there, right? So you recognize that you're not going to achieve some things immediately,
Right.
right? And then you break it down, sort of make sub goals, and uh, you can track them if you want, which I'm not very
Yeah.
good at. But peculiarly, if I go back and look at some of them, I have accomplished many of those goals.
Wow.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think intentional planning is important. I cannot,
Yes.
downplay that.
100%. There's research that shows if
Yeah.
you write your goals down, you're more likely to
Right.
achieve them. That's
Right.
also something I'm trying to lean into this year more. Just writing down my goals for the year.
Hmm.
What's that saying? If you shoot for the moon, you'll end up somewhere in the stars. So
Right.
you might as well know where you're trying to head.
Exactly. Right.
But do you think there's power in that, in writing down? Let's just say you have a New Year's resolution. In power in writing it down instead of just saying it out loud?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, writing it down gives me clarity. There are so many different tips and tricks to do that, like do it in a very short time, or then come back to it after a while. And yeah, breaking it down.
Right.
I found that useful. Yeah, like I said, this thing was pretty amazing. If I go back and look how I managed to, and not all of it was in my control. Um, so it was also, I think, but I think it was setting the intention was important,
Right. Yeah.
and
Like you said,
consciously, yeah.
chunking goals is also very
Hmm.
important. So I set a goal for running. I've
Hmm.
gotten more into running as a way to work on my cardio this year. And so I set a goal
Right,
for what I want to achieve by the end of the year in terms of time and speed. And
nice.
so then I worked backward to say, okay, if I want to hit that, which is a bit of a stretch from
Hmm.
where I am today, that
Right,
means at the end of January, I probably need to hit somewhere between where I am today and where I want to be in December, right?
right,
And then
right.
I can build on that every month.
Yeah.
So it gives me something to aim for in January and to try to build
Yes.
consistency in January. And I
Right.
find that immediacy really helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I also had a nice quip. So I was talking to another one of my young friends, And I said, I really need to start this morning, walk. So I used to take a morning walk very regularly, like right at the crack of dawn, sometimes before dawn. So I'd like to go. I used to love to go and watch the stars in the early morning
Mm.
before sunrise. And at one point, I was disciplined enough that I was doing it through the Iowa winter,
Oh,
uh,
wow. That's
which is
commitment.
pretty brutally cold. Yes, yes, yes. It's a very beautiful time.
Yeah.
And then I kind of fell off. I think a lot of it was, my mother's care took over parts of my schedule, and I just couldn't keep up with it. And so now, of course, I'm in a position where I can think of bringing it back. And so I said, I think it was the 30th or something. And I said, yeah, I really, in the new year, I should start. And then my young friend turns to me and says, well, why not tomorrow? Why
Yeah.
wait for the
Yeah.
new year?
Great point.
I loved it. So I said,
Great
yes,
point.
I'm going to do it tomorrow. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's such a good point.
Right.
I started doing some of this running work in December instead of starting in
Hmm.
January. That's the thing, right? New
Right.
Year's is kind of an arbitrary starting point.
Goes back to, right, right. Yeah,
You could start any time. If you want to say,
right.
okay, I want to look at this calendar year and do it, that
Hmm.
it makes sense. But you could start in December, you could start in February.
Right,
um,
right.
yeah, we're kind of
But I
beholden to the
love the
structure.
immediacy. Right.
Yeah,
I love the immediacy of the challenge, right?
right. Like,
What's
what can you
stopping you from
do?
doing it
Exactly. What's stopping you
tomorrow?
from
Yeah,
doing it tomorrow, today?
right.
So,
So I did it. I did start my walk, right?
yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good. So you started in December
yeah,
or in
yeah,
January?
yeah.
Wow.
December. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So jump
yeah.
starting New Year's.
Right, right.
So I did want to
Exactly.
ask you, here's another element of New Year's for me.
Hmm.
It has to do with how the world is changing.
Hmm.
Um, New Year's is a stark reminder that we have one less year to act on climate change.
Right.
So, when we say we need to hit these climate CO2 level goals by
Cool.
2030 or 2035 or 2040, when I
Right.
get to New Year's, realize, okay, well, now we have 4 years left, right? Or instead
Yeah.
of five.
Right. Right.
And so it's a little sobering. And I wonder if that's a generational difference. Not to say your generation doesn't think about that. I think they probably do,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
more a greater proportion, let's say, of folks in my generation, and then even in Gen Z below me and younger kids than that. I wonder if they feel that change on New Year's.
I think you're right in the sense that it's probably more top of mind for the younger generation, and rightfully so. Um, Not sort of letting my generation off the hook, but yeah, it does bring up that uncomfortable thing, which is I always ask myself, what could I be doing more
Right.
um, other than just worrying about it? And when I really take inventory, yeah, it's all the travel and all those things that, for me, unfortunately, seem to be going increasing. I think
Yeah.
I used to travel less in the past, but uh, unfortunately, from the sense of the carbon footprint that it entails. But at the same time, also coming to grips with the reality that there's probably some minimum impact that we will always have with our lives. And it's really hard. I think it's a very personal decision how you're going to square that circle,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and there is some work on this, right? Which is uh, if you want change, like there's one school of thought that argues that uh, personal changes are actually insignificant, and
Mm,
that the changes need to happen in much larger buckets. And there's another school of thought that thinks that it's actually by activating every individual that you actually effect change on the larger scale. I tend to believe a little more in the second camp,
hmm.
although I do think that, yes, in truth, it's when large entities make changes that their effects are more measurable.
Right.
But
Yeah, climate change is definitely beyond the scope of this podcast, but the idea of the ultimate collective action problem, right? Where you
right.
need so many people to make changes and you need some policy changes
Right.
all at once in order to
Yeah.
make a change. So, yeah, I do wonder if I don't maybe it's just me. I don't know if other people think about this on New Year's, but in my mind, the denominator goes down by one in terms of
Yeah.
um these projections on okay, well if we reduce carbon emissions or CO2 emissions by X% every year, well have
Right.
one less year to do that.
Right. So the ask keeps going up. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And maybe in some ways we
Yeah.
are hitting them. I haven't looked at the numbers totally, but I think we're a little bit lagging. And then, when you're in March or June, you're like, well, we can still make it up this year. Maybe there's
Right.
hope. There's hope that
Right.
maybe things can change.
Right.
But in the new year, you have to look back and say, oh, actually, maybe we need to do more. We didn't do as much.
That's right. It's a time of reckoning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go with that. And I think it's nice you brought that up because I hadn't thought about it. And so I hope everyone in my generation who's listening will also, take a moment to reflect on this important thing you raised.
Yeah. And I wanted to actually encourage us, you and me and our listeners, if they choose to adventure with us, to maybe think about some questions they could ask, of one another. Like a New Year's it's a good conversation point, and I hope this
Mhm.
conversation is bearing that out.
Yeah.
So let's just say if you're, in a household with other
Mhm.
generations, whether your kids, your parents, something else, what questions might people ask around the new year to better understand one another?
Mhm. What are your hopes and fears?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What are your hopes and
To
fears?
begin.
I think, maybe also what do you hope from your social circle, from what do you hope from the world? Like if
Right.
there's the climate change angle, um,
Right.
what maybe scares you about the new year?
Yeah.
I think, especially when you have kids, maybe in middle school, high school, there's maybe transitions, right?
Mm.
Oh, I'm gonna go start high school this year. I'm gonna start college this year. I wonder if
Right.
that's a conversation piece for people too.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And we're also going into an election year, right, in the US. So we've got that going on and, ongoing conflicts around the world. So a lot of things to think about.
Right. Also, it's a leap
Mhm.
year.
Ah, I didn't know that. That's
We
right.
have
Okay. Yeah.
366 days this year. Any other thoughts around the new year?
No, Nikhil, I hope it's a wonderful year for you and for
Thank
our
you.
listeners.
Yeah, you too. There's
Right.
there's a
And
lot of
I
hope.
hope, yeah, I mean, a lot of daunting things up ahead, but we'll have to soldier forward, right?
Yes. And the flip side of what we talked about, maybe as a closing thought, is if the question initially is, why start on New Year's, maybe the
Hmm.
flip is why not start on New Year's. It's as
Right.
good a time as any to pursue anything you're
It is.
trying. So
Right.
might as well start it now, but do it with some earnest planning and goal setting.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's a great idea.
Excellent. Well, Shankar, I did want to mention to the listeners as we start to wrap up here that we have some upcoming travel in January, so we'll be a little bit more infrequent in terms of our recording and our releases this month. We hope you will allow us that grace, but we'll try to put out some episodes, and then we'll be a little bit more consistent as we head into future months.
Yeah. So you can follow us on our usual outlets, Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, reach out to us over email at chaiacrossgenerations@gmail.com.
Yes, we'll see you all next time.